Kia ora, kia ora. My name's Donna Campbell. I'm from Ngāpuhi and Ngāti Ruanui. My mother's parents, my mother's side is Ngāpuhi and my father's side is Ngāti Ruanui. I was brought up in Auckland, and in the 60s it was a very racist place. I don't even think it's changed that much now. But my mother comes from a family of 14 children, and so they're always aunties, uncles, and there was cousins. So, you know, I grew up in that sort of beautiful environment. So weaving came into my life really, I think I was always surrounded by women who were doing things. Like my grandmother would make takako bread, which is like a flat Ngāpuhi Māori bread, but she'd also make yeast-filled bread. So in the evening, she'd put her bread in the bowl, and in the mornings, we'd wake up and just be overflowing the bowl, and it would blow my mind, and she'd just knead it back down and then bake it. My mother was always sewed. She taught me how to sew and knit and, you know, always keeping the hands really, really busy. But I wasn't introduced to rāranga until I went to art school. And then actually that's the impetus of a lot of research that I've been doing lately, is how those art forms, the art forms of rāranga and whātu, were marginalised back then, were colonised back then. So I was taught all the Pākehā arts, needlework, knitting, you know, that kind of thing, but I was never taught tū rāranga. And so when I learnt tū rāranga, that's when I really found my Māoriness, my wahine-ness, and through that practice I've been able to strengthen my being Māori. So if I have to put it into a list, it is, female takataapui, mana wahine, and an artist, a creative person, a weaver, you know, mother, sister, daughter, lover, all of those things. This is my reality, and so everybody around me has to adjust to my reality. So it's kind of like I don't think that my life is out of the norm of any. I don't think it's out of the norm, you know. And so people in our world, my partner and my wife and I, it's like they either accept us as we are or they're not in our world. Years ago, when I first came out to my parents, I remember saying to Mum, oh Mum, you know, I think I better tell you about, you know, I think I better just let you know that I'm gay. And she goes, oh, I've known that for ages. I've planted all these plants, and guess what they're called? Gay baby. So she'd planted all these little flowers in the garden at that time, and it was when Sam and I had first met. So, you know, it was kind of like, well, she already knew that. And so my parents have always been accepting of whoever we are, you know, my brother and sister and me, and they're just really open people anyway, so that was never a problem. My whole career of making sculptural work has been centred around women's bodies. So, you know, it's like that's where I see the beauty in the world, is through the feminine, and through women's bodies and how they move, how they just in general really. And so all of my sculptural work is centred around that, and notions of how we can take care of our bodies and not be subjected to what the ideal sort of patriarchal norms are, and to really appreciate what the Polynesian body is, what the Māori body is, and to accept our bodies. So that's what the work has been concentrated around for a couple of decades. You know, the Polynesian body, the Māori woman's body, it's not the ideal sort of patriarchal notion or the media idea of what beauty is. For us, for me, a Māori body is the most beautiful body ever. If the work that I make can have us look at ourselves or look at a female body, whether it's an aged body or a young body, that's been represented in a woven textile, which has a whole nother layer of information. If we can look at those forms and think about, oh, okay, what really is a Māori body, or what is my body about? And the kind of mainstream stories about our history, our mainstream narratives, especially around Māui, he is central to these pūrākau, when really it's the kuia that gifted him their treasures, that had him succeed in the world. And so all of those pūrākau, it seems that he's the central character and they are peripheral. So in my work, in the recent work that I've been doing, I've really focused on centralising these wahine, atua wahine, within those narratives. And so trying to create garments that represent them as from their names, but also garments that represent facets of the human inside us. And so the atua wahine, I'm not even sure that atua are gendered in that way. So, atua aren't human, but because we've personified them in a certain way, they become female or male. But ultimately, for me, I call them atua wahine, but they possess all the facets of what it is to be tāne, mana tāne, and mana wahine, and all of the other aspects and facets of what an atua would be. So when we try and think about them from a human standpoint, it's hard to kind of really understand the power that's embodied within an atua. So to take that on, so I think that atua have like fluid identities, right? And I think that as human beings, we also have fluid identities. And like I said earlier, it's about whatever role you're in at the moment, whether you are going to be more enacting a mana tāne way of being because of the role that you're in at that point in time, or whether you're going to enact a mana wahine aspect of yourself, or whatever's in between. So those, to me, that's like fluid identity. So the pieces I'm making are trying to capture that, like a fluid identity. We know that from our language, ia is the word that indicates a person. So it's a non-gendered word. So ko ia, could be a he or a she, or anything in between that. And so but from our fundamental language base, already we know that there is a respect for however that person is going to express themselves. And then all of the roles that we undertake, like tuakana taina, those roles that we identify ourselves by cousin, aunt, uncle, all of those different roles are how we identify ourselves. So I live in a different tribal area. So my mother lives right up north, and so I have to make sure there's a balance there of making time to visit whānau that are in Auckland, and then to take time to visit mum right up north. And that can be quite a mission. We're just busy, everyone's busy, and but it's critical to my own well-being that mum is well, and so that's what it takes, is about balancing out our lives. But what's interesting, being takataapui and living with our cousin, and she's got 2 teenagers, and there's a young woman who lives up the road who's just coming out. And so, I think that that's quite a beautiful opportunity for us to role model, which we're not intentionally, but role modeling a really loving relationship. And so I think we're quite privileged to have that as well. I think health professionals need to, in order to address the needs of takataapui, they need to be really open, or not even really open, just mindful and respectful of of takataapui, mindful and respectful of people's choices, and to not judge us, you know, and to think about us in a certain stereotypical way. And I mean, that goes for takataapui and for being Māori and for being a woman. You know, so all of those layers that we are negotiating. And so health professionals need to be aware of that, and also aware and open to our histories. You know, because some of us have quite complex histories. So for instance, I have I had hepatitis C. And so, you know, there's this whole process of coming out to the doctor. Like, you know, you have to kind of like just tell this person about your life, and you have to be able to trust them. So they need to be able to you know, make us feel comfortable enough to be able to do that, you know. And so being able to do that is being respectful, listening, and not being judgmental. You know, when I was growing up, when I was in my 5s and 6s, I was my prime babysitters were my gay auntie and her partner. And, you know, when I was growing up, it's like, oh, never thought anything about it. And so I think, you know, really way back then, there was just this, there's no difference. You know, really way back then, there's no difference. And there was no kind of gender bias or whatever, you know. And so this was my father's sister and her partner. And really very coolly, like 30 years later, I hadn't seen her for a couple of decades, and then I saw her in one of the lesbian balls in Auckland way back when, you know, and I was with my partner. I was like, ta-da! You know, she was like, oh my God, Donna! You know, and that was just such a really neat feeling. You know, so that was then. And as I've grown up, there've been other women that have been quite strong attractions, you know, for me. And so, you know, you do what you do. But, you know, and recently, as in my kind of adult years, I guess, you know, I've got such a lot of strong takataapui women around me who are just phenomenal, amazing, intelligent, strong, beautiful women. And so, you know, that is always uplifting. And there is this space where it's like we can connect to our tūpuna through the practice. You know, and it's like no matter how much you talk about it, that doesn't happen. It's about engaging with the plant, engaging with the practice, and it just takes you somewhere that it just takes you somewhere that you wouldn't go if you weren't doing raranga. And that feeling of whātu is the process of making making korowai. You know, that process where you're weaving across like this, it's like, to me, it's like you're connecting the past and the present. The past this way, like you're on a continuum. When we're using the whātu method and creating kākahu, we work like this along like a continuum. And so I kind of think of the continuum as past, the weavers in the present, creating for the future. And that connection for the kai rāranga or the kai whātu is a liminal space. You know, again, like a fluid kind of experience of the past in the present for the future. Sitting on a kākahu, just being in that present moment, you are yesterday and tomorrow in the present. So, yeah. But that's what I wanted to say too. It's meditative, but I wouldn't say that it's relaxing, because it's really challenging, you know. You have to be present to what's happening. Yeah. It's a beautiful practice. Everyone should do it.